Hello everybody and welcome to another hobby cheating video. Today we're going to talk about taking our old display boards and doing something useful with them. Let's get into it.
The strict technomancer that is Vincey V. Let us get to the technique and learn it Vincey V
So,
style.
if you're a long-time watcher of this channel, you know I don't really love display boards. I make them because they're sort of a necessary evil when I take my armies to tournaments. However, then you've got the question of what do you do with these things? If you've watched some of my previous videos, you know we tend to make some fairly elaborate display boards, and then the problem is they just sit around. They're huge, these 2 foot by 2 foot giant chunks of things. So today we're going to talk a little about terrain and how to harvest them from your boards and then get these things out of there. So we're not really going to head over to the desk per se, right? At least not right away. Instead, we're going to head out to the other room. Let's go check out some of those display boards. So this is some of my existing display boards. You can see here's the new one I just finished. So this is for my new Skaven. It matches with the basing scheme, which you saw in a previous video. And the problem is I've got these old display boards. They've been hanging out forever. I don't know what to do with them. And I don't want to just throw them away because there's a lot of really valuable terrain on here. So I realized what I'm going to do is just basically harvest that terrain off of there. And I think one of the things that can sometimes hold us back is where we don't want to destroy something we created. But the reality is, if it doesn't have any value, if I'm not actively using this thing, then let's take and harvest what we can from it and get some value out of it. My table needs some new terrain anyways, and it's all just sitting here waiting to be used. So I start by just literally ripping off anything that'll come off with my hands. Pretty straightforward. A lot of the terrain is smaller pieces, little things that I can just crack right off of there. So I pull that all off. Next up, I get a big old flathead screwdriver and I just start prying off the rest of the stuff. There's not too much more to say about it except you don't have to be delicate. You can really just start tearing it up. And as you can see, I'm just ripping off all of these different pieces, parts, buildings, rocks, displays, all that stuff. And realistically, it's a lot of terrain that I use on these boards. In fact, I didn't even realize how much it actually was until I started taking it all off and making a pile of it. And I was like, geez, I've got, a good table worth of terrain easily between these two boards. And for a couple years, that stuff has just been sitting there unused. So this is really going to be good because it'll give me more options to play, games on, to use them. But also, it just actually puts something to good use as opposed to just sitting there and being, I guess something that's kind of cool but useless. Let's make it useful. So once I have everything all ripped off, I get a big giant pile. So I just pile up all the terrain and, realistically what's neat is now I can put it back together in different ways. And when I'm not just going to put the terrain directly on my table. The first thing I do is, of course, pick off some of the little bits and pieces and shave off some of the bottom stuff because sometimes some of the pink foam came with it. So we're going to go ahead and take all that off. I just shave it down using a hobby knife, no big deal. But I really need to get a base for this stuff. I'm a big believer that when you do terrain for your table, it should be on a base. That way you can easily understand what the edge of the terrain is and it's clear for all rules purposes. So once I get all that cleaned off, it's time to get a base. What are we going to use? Well, we're going to use our old friend Plasticard. So I buy these big multi-packs of Plasticard. You can get them off Amazon. There's a link down below in the affiliate links if you want to pick some up for yourself. They're cheap and really useful for 100 different reasons beyond just this. But they end up being good bases. As a side note, in addition to just Plasticard, you can also use things like old discarded CDs or stuff like that. Like if you still have old CDs or something that are broken or damaged or you're not using, you can use those too. Those actually make pretty great bases also. Anyways, so I take the Plasticard and I put the terrain down on top of it, and then I just draw a rough shape around where I want the edge of the base to be. The cool thing about Plasticard is you don't have to really cut through it completely. You've just got to score it appropriately, and then it will crack apart. So I go ahead and get that line on there. Just draw it with a pencil, no big deal. It's all going to get covered up later anyways. So, and then I take my X-Acto and I cut a nice line roughly into the same shape. Again, you don't actually have to trace it exactly. You're just getting a general layout of the size so that way you know it's going to completely surround the piece of terrain. So if you don't get it exactly, it's fine. It's meant to be a rough guide, not an exact thing you're trying to trace. Once I score in with that, I then just simply crack the rest of the pieces off. Just give it a good bend back and forth, and the scoring will do its job, and the plastic card will snap. Once it's there, I attach it to the actual base. That is to say, I attach the terrain to the actual piece of plastic card. For that, I use this aquarium co-op glue. I love this stuff. This is aquarium glue, so it's tested and watertight. Anytime I'm using actual super glue, this is my absolute go-to. I'll throw a link down below for where you can order this stuff. I don't have like an affiliate relationship or anything with them. I just think they're a really good company. I know the people who run it. It's a local place. They're good people. So there you go. Check it out. Definitely the super glue I would recommend. So anyways, once all that's attached, I kind of just continue, rinse and repeat. Make new, take each piece of terrain, draw a rough line around it, cut and score the plastic card, glue it down. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay, so now we've got it on plastic card. Now, realistically, if you don't really care, you could just stop here. This will be clear enough for your table. So it really depends on kind of your level of investment in making your table look cool. But I'm going to show you just a really nice, quick, easy way to make this look better. All right, so we're going to take some ground paste. In this case, I'm going to use the paste from Huge Miniatures. They make excellent basing pastes. There's lots of stuff out there you can get. I'll include, again, the link you can find for this down below. Again, I don't have any relationship with Huge Miniatures, but they're, again, a good local company. I like supporting local vendors and stuff like that, especially those who make good products like this. But you can also, if the shipping or you're overseas somewhere or you want to work local, you can just go get coarse basing medium from the art store. Vallejo makes basing pastes, so lots of options available. I will put links down there for the Vallejo paste and the coarse medium gel as well from Amazon in case you want to pick those up. But at any rate, I then just take that and start spreading it out. I'm using my silicone shaper tools, which I've talked about before, and I just literally spread it out all over the base, bringing it right to the edge. It doesn't need to be a completely even coat. You'll notice how in some places it's relatively thin, and you can still see the light color of the plastic card through there. That's fine. Don't worry. No big deal. We're just getting some rough texture on here, and we're good to go. So after spreading it out over all of the terrain pieces, I use a couple different kinds here, different colors and tones. It's not really going to matter too much in the end, but it can still help with some variance. Once that's all done, my next step is very simple. I get out my old friend Agrax Earthshade. We all know it. We all love it. I use a big brush and I wet that brush first. So every time I go into the wash, I'm doing so with a very moist brush. Like I dip into water, then I dip into the wash. And I just start spreading it all over the whole base. Basically, I want a lot of this to kind of cover over. It'll create a nice medium base. We're almost sort of priming with this, but at the same time, it's going to get some darkness down in the recesses and create nice recess shadows, which will be valuable for our later steps. So once I just go ahead and do a quick thin wash over everything and let it dry, we're ready for our next step, which is to get out some kind of bright color. In this case, I use like a bright yellow, basically, like a bright yellow white. And I just give it a nice dry brush. Dry brushing all of this texture, bring it all out. This is going to look really weird initially. It'll almost look like snow, it's so bright. I know, I'm telling you this is yellow, and on camera it just looks, completely white. A point that you don't actually ever really need to use white paint, because anything even proximally in the area will feel like white to your eye. But at any rate, I give it a good dry brush. That's going to pull up all the raised texture. So the wash filled all the recesses in. Now this will pull up all the raised texture. And I just go ahead and quickly do a nice, decent dry brush across all of that texture, and we're all set. Just one more step. Don't worry. Very, very, very easy. This stuff is fast. I didn't want to go and like prime everything here because I attach it to the terrain already and I didn't want to have to repaint anything. Could I have just sat there and reprimed everything by hand with a big brush? Yes, of course. But like, why? You don't need to. And trust me, once we do the next step, it's going to blow you away. So, with all of that paint now in the recesses and the highlights through the wash and the dry brush, we then go to our old friend, pigment. That's right, we get out some dry pigment. This is some Vallejo pigment, as you can see. And I just start going in and just dropping a heavy amount on here. And I really work it in. So you can see how I just really take my brush. I do not use a nice brush for this, obviously. I really am just like working it. I want to push it toward the building. So the outer edges of the terrain still stay kind of light, but near whatever the building or other structure is or other piece of terrain has a little more of the dirt color to it. And I just work my way around the whole building or the whole structure. And you can see here, it's pretty fast, really. Didn't take me a lot of time to do any of this. And I just take that brush, but the point is I'm really, really stabbing it, working it. You see me like working back and forth with those bristles, forcing that pigment down into the recesses, the pits, the holes, the open space, the texture, so that it really adheres in there. Okay, so with that, you can see it's more or less ready to go. Now, I don't really do much to affix the pigment, though there's lots of ways you can. You could use a pigment fixer if you want. You could also just take your airbrush, drop a couple drops of varnish in, spray the thing, or a rattle can varnish. You're good to go. Not really much more you need to it than that. When it's all done, you'll see they come out like this. This is how all these pieces that I did look. So I did about 5 pieces. This took me, cutting the plastic card, doing all the little stuff. There was a lot of dry time in there. Actual work time was for all 5 pieces of terrain was maybe like 45 minutes. So it's really nice. It's easy. It's fast. And now I have some more really cool pieces of terrain for my table. And importantly, it made me feel like, oh, all those display boards that I made, they weren't for nothing. I am now going to be able to put those things to good use and get some more fun and enjoyment out of them. Of course, there was only one more step to do, and that was to take the display boards themselves and throw them in the trash. With all the terrain picked off of it, they're nothing more than pink foam and a little bit of basing paste. And so with that, they're out of here. So, all in all, I know this was an unusual hobby cheating. I hope it gave you some ideas for how to do bases quick, because you can use this basing technique of just like laying down the paste and then washing it, dry brushing it, and pigmenting it for anything, including your figures if you're looking for fast, easy bases. So hopefully that's useful. But hopefully this helps give you an idea for upscaling or, harvesting some of your own terrain if you've got old display boards sitting around and you don't really know what to do with them. But this stuff will be adorning my table in the future, and now I kind of feel better about making display boards, so that's a real victory. If you liked this, give it a like, subscribe for additional hobby cheating. We have new videos here every Saturday. If you've got any questions about making display boards or destroying display boards, hey, I'm happy to answer any questions you ask down in the comments below. If you want to support the channel, there's lots of ways you can do so. I mentioned those affiliate links earlier. You can check those out and pick that stuff up. It's really helpful to the channel. Doesn't cost you anything extra. In fact, it sometimes saves you money, but it is just really helpful for us in keeping the lights on around here. There's also, of course, the games I make with Uncle Adam. Those are all available down there. And there's also, of course, our Patreon, focused on review and feedback and taking your next step on your hobby journey. We would love to have you as part of the community. As always, though, I thank you so much for watching this one, and we'll see you next time.